And that sound signifies the start of another missile for the masses. This is the Chaplain's Assistant's Motor Pod, and I am your host, Gary. And this is the podcast where usually I talk a little bit about what's going on in my life with collecting, and every missile I go over a vehicle, playset, or even a trailer from the G.I. Joe, a real American hero toy line from 1982 to present day. This is another unusual episode, as I'm not going to be talking about a vehicle, playset, or trailer. This is the issue 301 special of G.I. Joe, Real American Hero, and I brought with me two special guests. Steve, say hi, Steve.
Hello, Gary.
And Steve's been on a few times, but for the first time, we have Paul from G.I. Joburg. How you doing, Paul?
Hey, how's it, Gary? Hi, and hey, listeners, and how's it, Steven?
Thanks for having us, Gary.
Yeah. Thanks for coming on. I've picked an off week for you too. And so I know what Steve's favorite vehicle, playset, or trailer is. So, Paul, it's your turn. Ooh. What is your, it doesn't have to be your favorite. It could be your flavor of the moment. What would you say is your favorite toy to bring you happiness in the G.I. Joe toy line?
Actually, that's a good question. Okay, like I'm just gonna say it out now. Like my all-time super favorite is my Warthog. Is the Warthog, and I got one again last year. I was reunited with the Warthog last year. Thank you, Steve. And that has been like getting a lot of my interest. But my happy place at the moment is the Cobra Flight Pod. Like I am, but the vintage, or the modern era, the 25th anniversary one, I love that little toy. It's so cool. It's just great. You put a dude in, you fly around, you can do like little missions. It's great. That's what I'm loving at the moment. That's like my favorite vehicle at the moment.
Good choice.
Thank you, man.
They're coming out of a Cobra mothership or a helicarrier.
In my stories lately, because like I often have it on my desk, and I surprisingly don't have it right now because I put it in a box because I'm moving stuff around. I don't want it to break, but I often have it coming out of a secret Cobra installation. So, yeah.
Does that strike a nerve, Gary? Because I think the last time we spoke was about the Cobra mothership, and it dawned on you that you didn't have a complete flight pod.
That has been that has been fixed.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just most of my play really, it started around the cartoon, but then evolved into the comic series. Because I played with, Joes into high school, later than most kids. And it was the comic
Present
book.
company excluded, of course. Oh. Most kids.
Most
Pish
kids.
posh. Play until you're 25 and about to move out of house.
But it was, my play centered around the comic book adventures at that point. So I had kind of forgotten about the Sunbow era and all that stuff because the Flight Pod really doesn't feature in the comics as much.
It doesn't. It's criminal.
I can't think of a single... Well, I suppose the Michael Golden special missions. No, the yearbook, that big splash. That's the only prominent feature I can think of for the old Flight Pod in the comics.
Yeah,
it just did not feature.
Yeah.
Huh. Interesting. It's the first time I've thought about that. The Claw gets a great feature. That's Storm Shadow's so personal ride, but not the Flight Pod.
I'm really hoping that we get a classified Claw, actually.
Yeah, I think to me the Claw is more iconic than the Flight Pod, but
it is because
I know that's fighting words.
Yeah.
But I also always think of the Commander Escapes 24, the Russ Heath illustrated issue, because just as prominent there, and Storm Shadow actually gets to use it himself, to rescue the Commander. And then assemble that sweet little sniper rifle.
I dig I wonder, just thinking of it, thinking of the classified version, I imagine, or a part of me thinks that they're going to do it as like a Claw and Storm Shadow 2-pack for a Comic-Con or some kind of convention or Hasbro Pulse thing or whatever's. But that's how I think that they're going to introduce that vehicle. I think they're going to try and create like a homage to 21 and do like Snake Eyes, Scarlet, and because we still haven't received that new Scarlet classified figure, and I think once she's been released, we will get that 3-pack with a Claw. At least that's my that's
this
my
time next year is the 40th anniversary of the Silent issue.
So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. You heard it here, folks. if
Maybe
I'm
it'll
right,
be a comic pack.
Sweet.
That would be sweet.
Wow.
We'll see.
And yourself, Gary, what
paying tribute to the foot of Master Harmer.
And you know what all? Yeah, he's scribed so many of these 301 issues of G.I. Joe Real American Hero on top of special missions and other miniseries in between, like Silent Option, and just, it's hard to go through them all off the top of my head, Declassified, Storm Shadow. But that brings us to, again, issue 301. And without spoiling anything, do you two, we'll start with you, Steve, have any impressions you want to share of the book for the listeners?
Well, look, Gary, are we really going to endeavor to not spoil anything?
Just for a couple of moments.
Well, I hope this doesn't count as a spoiler, but my first takeaway from this new launch is that if anyone thought that this would be a soft reboot, that if Larry was lining up all his ducks in a row to basically begin with Skybound at a kind of a base level that was an easy jumping on point, perish the thought, baby. It's very much rooted in the convoluted storyline that has kind of been evolving for 300 issues. And I'm curious to know if you gents are on board with that, or if you feel like you wished someone had been able to give him a directive to make this a sort of an entry-level book. Hey, man, I'm easy either way, to be honest. But it's interesting, like, it very much sets in stone that no one is going to tell Larry what to do at this point. Not Hasbro, not Skybound. This is his book, and he will run it as he sees fit for as long as he can, or as they let him. Let him. This is amazing. It's a record-breaking run. But it's just interesting to me that he's beyond reproach.
So, Paul,
me, actually, just to add to what Steven said now, I love that they didn't reboot it, so to speak. Like, I love that it's just carrying on. So that's a good thing. It's good. It's a good and a bad thing at the same time, I guess. My biggest takeaway from this is I like being excited about a comic again. Never mind just G.I. Joe, but like a comic book in general. Because when I started seeing the artwork, like little bits of art and whatever's popping up on Facebook leading up to the release of this, I was like, wow, I really want to own that book. So much so that when I was when I went out to the shops yesterday, I asked at the comic book shop if they had 301 or if it's coming in or something, because I thought, hey, this would be great to add. So yes, my takeaway from it right now is this is an exciting issue for me to want to own. I think it's got a lot more to do with the art than the writing. No offense. I'm not knocking the writing. It's just I'm more excited about the art in this right now. Like, I'm actually looking at it now. I've got it open, got the Kindle open.
Awesome. As you should.
As I should. But yeah, that's my takeaway right now. I'm just really loving the art. And I'm loving the I can't wait to get into the nitty-gritty of this conversation with this book.
All right.
Because I got things. I'm like, amped. Yeah.
And my initial impression is exactly the change in art style is fresh. It is, as you said, Steve, completely rooted in the story from the previous publisher. I think that it's not spoiling anything. There's 3 pages of catch-up narrative in the beginning that is woefully incomplete. It's designed to at least give new readers of the book, and that's something that Skybound always, in some of their other titles that I've read, they, especially Kirkman's Invincible, has always tried to make a jumping on point on certain anniversaries, but it is so woefully inadequate for bringing you up to the events that ended issue 300. So it is it's good and bad, and I think that's as much as we really can say without spoiling this. So if you haven't bought issue 301 and you're listening to this, and if what we said makes you want to check it out or not, feel free to pause this podcast or just keep listening, because we're going to talk about every little excruciating detail, maybe not, but we're going to talk the heck out of the plot, the story, the art, and just in general, issue 301. So with that,
here we go.
So I'll start off with just a quick summary of what's going on this issue. Picking up from issue 300 is, the Joes are split into 2 teams. One team with Cutter in the Whale trying to break back into Cobra Island, and then the other team in the C-130 with Wild Bill Duke, with one engine now losing hydraulic pressure, crashing into Cobra Island right atop the Cobra Casino. And in the first 6 pages, which were pleasantly spoiled online by the previews, we do see Wild Bill and Duke regaining control of the C-130 to not crash into the Cobra Casino. In the meantime, the team on the Whale, as they're trying to penetrate the Cobra Casino, they get word of the deadly mutant virus zombie bomb has been triggered, and then they retreat and try to escape Cobra Island with Cobra Commander and captured. So this issue really concentrates on the events of the Joe team trying to escape Cobra Island before the zombie bomb goes off. And during those events, Cobra Commander shoots Wade Collin, sometimes known as Fred II, and the injuries will eventually prove fatal. They meet up at the end to pay respects. And that's pretty much it for the plot. Do you guys see anything really important that I missed?
No. I think you nailed it pretty much. Yeah.
It's a pretty simple plot.
It's very straightforward. It's I think that's kind of the trick with this book as well. Like, it's just keep it action heavy. Just keep it flowing, folks, so that people feel the need to buy at least, the first 5 issues. It's kind of the vibe that I'm getting here. So that we don't stop to think about it too hard and just enjoy the spectacle of it. It's kind of a feel. But something I want to circle back to, and this is like super, super important for me. Those intro pages that you mentioned, they are inadequate in terms of telling a whole story or a whole backstory leading up to this point. But man, they look great. Like, just that first panel of the Joes running towards us with the Mobat behind us, or behind us. I would love that as a print. That would be so cool. Like, and that kind of like got me all excited. Like, as soon as I saw this first page, I was like, oh, this comic is going to be amazing. I hope it's not like this for 2 pages and then the rest of it is like, but yeah, it just kept on getting better for me. So
that's funny, Paul. I'm far keener on the pit cross section. I want to just isolate that and be able to get into the nuts and bolts of the details there. Because the second panel of the book is, well, it's Duke and Hawk kind of posing all macho. but the backdrop, very cleverly worked in by artist Chris Mooneyhan, who I have nothing but good things to say about, is a Pit 3 in Utah cross section. I mean, he neglected to have the giant robot cave, the Transformers cave that's sealed off. I suppose that's the grayed out section on the right. But the pit, he's got a C-130 in there. He's got a whale in there. Our two kind of protagonists of this issue. Wolverines, what look like hammers. Oh man, so many cool little details, and some of it criminally covered up by text. So
damn speech bubbles.
Yeah, who needs the catch up info? I just want to see this amazing artwork stand on its own.
I also like the wording used on. Sorry for the listeners on this. I don't know if this is good, exciting for you guys to hear or not, but I love the wording used for the recap. It's I think it's so cool how
poetic.
It's very, and it's kind of conversational as well. But then you find out it's actually from the Cobra perspective. So don't know if you guys picked up on that, because at the very last speech bubble is, as insidious as our enemies are, the G.I. Joe team is always on the front line of the battle to keep us secure. So, like, I kind of feel like that's kind of a bad guy point of view, but then it kind of gets a bit funny. I don't know, but it just felt that way to me. I felt like this was Mindbender. When I was reading it, I thought it was Mindbender, and then I kind of, I don't know.
It does set an interesting kind of very clear line that Cobra is taking, that their goal, upset the world order and create markets for their weapons. Now, I've never seen such a pure distillation of Cobra's manifesto, of their purpose, than that. I mean, it's very Monster of the Week, like scheme of the week. The previous run of Cobra, of ARA, I often ask myself, like, but what's Cobra actually trying to achieve here? They're just simply existing. They're basically moving their headquarters from Broca Beach to Rancho Cobra to Cobra Island. They just keep moving around and having battles and skirmishes and altercations with Revanche, etc. But now we learn that, they're still after world domination. Well, that's good to know.
Well, it's funny that you say world domination, because when they say that they want to create markets to sell their weapons, that's Destro to me. That's not Cobra.
Yeah.
And it just seems like there's a little bit of conflict, and I want to see how Destro and the Baroness are going to play now in the Skybound universe. But I know we gotta finish up with Serpentor Khan first, and I want to circle back to Chris Mooneyham's art, and I think it's fantastic. It's definitely a tonal shift from the previous
SL Gallant, and I do appreciate his art. It's a very house style for like Marvel in the 80s, clean lines with the proper inker. It really does. It just feels like that very 1980s, like a step beyond Rod Wiggum, in the art style. But Chris Mooneyham evokes, a lot of comparison to Joe Kubert. I see a lot of the later era of Russ Heath, some of Russ Heath's early 2000s work. It reminds me of. It's clean. He does the heavy inks, but I think it's also unfair to not mention the colorist, Francesco Segala.
Yeah.
His colors are so much more moody than Jay Brown's, and it delivers more drama. But I think it works between the inking and the coloring. It's really working incredibly well for me on this book. I think the art is dramatic, but also his layouts are really good.
Yeah,
The way he insets, like what's going on, I want to say it was, you're like 5-6 pages in, and the way he's cutting in the heads as they're talking while the plane's crashing. It allows you to still focus that the plane's crashing, but who's speaking. You don't have that confusion of, well, who's saying this, or what's going on there. It's definitely
more than a few lovely little tricks there, Gary. The ticking clock of the mutant bomb is inserted to just give you that urgency panel to panel, as if a stricken aircraft is not enough. You've got this bomb going off. I'm going to lean into something that I imagine was a brainchild of Francesco's, and that's everything has a retro dot gain veneer. If you push in on the panels, they've inserted into the way it's colorized that old style comic book newsprint texture.
Yeah.
You're going to back me up on that, Paul? Because
definitely.
It kind of desaturates things a little bit.
Yeah, it's actually saturated, believe it or not.
And then by putting in the dot texture, it then kind of loses that heaviness of the color.
It stops it from being garish,
which is something I've wanted from a G.I. Joe book for so long, just to have continuity with the old school comic books in just the most slightest of kind of lip services. But this is enough to make it feel like an older book than it actually is. And
I also like having emotion in the coloring and the design of the panels. Like even just this first page, you got this plane spiraling down, and the plane itself is red, and everything else is like a cooler kind of blues and greens and things like that. And then you got the Cobra Casino, which is very distinctly sort of kind of purple and shaped out. And like I enjoyed those kind of colors in a comic book more than trying to color it quote unquote realistically, because it's just more evocative. It's more comic book. It's more cartoon, but in a good way. It's a graphic storytelling without it conveys emotion without having to convey the emotion of the characters through their dialogue. I mean, just a shot of Duke and Wild Bill being so red and orangey just shows you like the tension and what they're going through just in that little panel. And then going back to the Joes at the back there, at the bottom, that's also a big firefight that's happening, but it's not happening in the same place where Duke and Wild Bull are, and that's very clever color design.
No, I'm going to challenge you on that, Paul. That is in the back of the C-130.
Yeah, but it doesn't look like it's like. How do I put it to you? It's like there's a separate. You moving through the scene. You're not going. You're not. If you cut back to Duke and Wild Bull, they kind of do the same thing again, where they kind of go, okay, cool, it's more reddish now. Now things are more under control, kinda. And
I like that point though, Paul. It's like in film, the function of lighting
and grading,
pick things out of importance and add a kind of an artistic filter to reality. So here we're seeing the vision of the artist portrayed artists through color. Lovely, lovely, man.
And all of the cross hatching and stuff used, and all of the lines used, just create tension and anxiety and movement. It's very cool.
And for me, channel sort of war books of old.
Yes.
Which the Kubert name is kind of synonymous with. Yeah, I see Sergeant Savage artwork running throughout this, and I suppose by the same token, Sergeant Rock, obviously. It's beautiful to look at.
As a side note, like the Kuberts, the Joe, Adam, and Andy, in the night when I was still drawing as a teenager and learning to draw and copying from comic, those three were odd parents of mine in a big way. I used to love pouring through books and like just sort of copying their line art and their inking and stuff, or the inking that was done on a lot of their work, a lot of the X-Men stuff actually. And Joe Kubert was amazing. He has such a cool graphic style to his work, and I feel like this. Thank you, Steve. Chris Moonaham is a big fan of them as well, because it's definitely in his work. Without it being theirs, it's his. He owns it. Damn, these panels are beautiful.
And I know we glossed over the many, many variant covers, but the main cover is by Andy Kubert to keep this artistic trend moving along. And it, like you said, it is very evocative of drawing that line between traditional war comics and this 1980s comic, and this kind of retro modern vibe that this first issue, I think, absolutely nails. And I don't know if either of you saw, but Andy Kubert asked to do the covers for the first arc.
Cool.
He asked Skybound to do it, and I think that speaks a lot to Hama as well, because Hama is kind of credited, I saw in some sources, about helping Andy get his start over at Marvel.
Oh, okay.
As he did all those covers in the late 80s and early 90s.
Yeah.
When Mark Bright was taking over the penciling chores on the interior. And
that is a cool little nugget to unveil. Nice one, Gary.
Yeah.
Beautiful continuity there.
So, and again, I think the current count's like 25 variant covers with...
It's funny. I was going through the credited list on the sort of the inside cover of the book, and I think I counted up to 15. So you say there are even more than that. Oh my goodness.
Well, what you end up having is I think there's a couple foils. There's, there's the trade, covers with trades, and then virgin covers, and
all right, comic book,
and now you have a second printing coming out.
Good luck, completionists.
Yeah,
I love that is in the comic book though. Like, what all of the variants are. That was always a big thing for me. Unless you were like following.
Well, they didn't thumbnail them, so you don't have.
They didn't.
I saw some complaints about that.
Yeah. But imagine trying to stick 25 thumbnails in this front cover, front inside.
Yeah, I know. Titan will do that.
Oh yeah. I love that we're talking about the covers in this moment, because this is like kind of a bugbear for me, and I think it's something that at least Stephen and I are really, or not just Stephen and I, but if you, like Stephen and myself, own the Kindle version because you haven't been able to get your hands on the physical copy, one of the bummers is that you only get the main cover. Now that's not a problem because the cover is amazing, but I always like it when you buy a digital version and they throw in the like Easter egg of you having all of the covers in a bit of a gallery format after the book, and mine doesn't have that, and I wished it did. I just feel a bit cheated, But then again, what is the cover price? What is the cover price on this comic book, Gary?
$3.99.
Okay, well then I think that's ridiculous. Then why didn't we get it? Yeah, but. Anyway, that's just a small gripe. So, guys, buyers beware, I suppose. If you're getting the Kindle edition, you won't have the cover gallery included. You guys are going to have to go and find all the books yourself.
Yeah.
So, nah. Anyway, guys, the story. Yeah, sorry, man. Yeah, before I took us off track.
Yeah. I want to say this is a really good issue by Hama. I really enjoyed it. While it does have some of his tropes around it. To me, this is like, sometimes he's like kind of meddling with his story. He's moving the chess pieces in place, but I'm really happy that of all the chess moving he did towards issue 300, we're getting a jam-packed action issue for 301 to start off this new run, something that is, while like you said earlier, Paul, that the plot is rather simple and it moves, but like when I read this the first time, it was like, I felt like, wow, a lot really happened. And then as I was reflecting on it, I was like, wow, a lot really didn't happen.
Yeah.
It was an A to B plot story, but it was so action packed with action beats that the fact that this was really a, going from Cobra Island to New Orleans for the Joe team, there was a lot of drama. There was a lot of things that kept me invested in each page and turning each page. It was absolutely not boring for me.
Likewise. I actually got to the end of the book and I was kind of like, oh, with the rest. And that has been really, really great for me. Because as you guys know, on G.I. Joburg, we've been doing sort of a down count on the issues and an up count on the vintage stuff or on the retro stuff or whatever people want to classify that. And like, unfortunately for the vintage stuff, it's always such a pleasure, but the modern stuff for me has been quite difficult. And this has just been fantastic. Also, so I'm thumbing through the book as we're doing this podcast, and
same.
Here's a great example of so there's a scene where the C-130 is about to get it's managed to level itself out, and they kind of they meet those, like, what are they called, the Revenge cyborgs? Well, are those the Revenge cyborgs or the Bats? I think it's the Bats. I can't tell. I think both. These are the Revenge ones. It's both.
They call them Bats, but they are absolutely the sort of the skin jobs from Revenge that look like casino waitresses.
Wait staff, I suppose, if we want to be PC. Anyway, they fire off some wrist rockets, and the panel, again, now you got Wild Bill and Duke in the cockpit, and that whole panel's blue, and it's cold. Mm-hmm. And I love that, that sucking the energy out of the scene, that like, oh, shit, kind of thing. Sorry. Oh, no. And I love that. And that's what I mean about the color direction in this. It's so good. It's so emotive. And it tells such a great story. Man, and these page layouts, just chef's kiss. So
I want to level this is exciting. Pick at the very next panel, because you've teed me up so nicely there, Paul, because it shows the C-130 with a sort of a black smoke trail coming off the engine, and that's going in a sort of a counter. Well, the plane would have gone counterclockwise in order to create this plume that goes in kind of a circle. So it's doing a barrel roll, right, to avoid these two wrist rockets. The smoke plumes from the wrist rocket pass in front of the aircraft. Now, that is a visual confusion for me, because if you've evaded them, the plumes should go behind the aircraft. Because it would cross the aircraft while it was kind of wings vertical. You know, at the center point of the barrel roll, where the one wingtip is pointed downwards and the other wingtip is pointed skywards, that's where those missiles would have passed on either side, which would then mean that the smoke plumes would not be in front of the engines, but behind them. Anyway, it took me a while to figure out that panel, and I think it would have been assisted if the smoke plumes were correct.
I think had I been in that situation that the penciler was in, or that the artist was in, I may have also strayed to gone with this kind of option. Not saying I would have done it exactly the same way. I'm saying I would have also erred on the side of style over trying to make it super realistic, because A, I've never seen it in my life before ever. And it's difficult for me to understand. And B, I don't have a great understanding of how military weapons work in that kind of physical space. So I just would have gone with the full-on, how do I make a really great composition, and spiraling the smoke around the C-130 as they have, and then doing the white smoke and crossing through and just telling the story, because that was enough from, like, when I was reading this, for me to go, oh, cool, it's dodged it. You know,
it makes me wonder why the hell, you know, with the smoke plumes moving in front, and I don't want to labor this point too much, it looks like it should have hit the plane. Like what stopped it from hitting the plane? It kind of seemed to have veered up suddenly. It went out of its way to miss. Anyway, whatever. As I say, I don't want to labor the points, but like just a layperson giving an expert artist his 2 cents. I think you should have made the smoke plumes go behind. Anyway, great radio. Sorry.
Nits.
Well, you want another nit? So they name check all the people in the back of the C-130 at one point. Scarlett does. Can you guys cue up that page?
It's when I get to that. Ooh.
Yeah.
And
can you tell me who she missed?
You want to just read the panel and then see. So who did you miss? Duke, CoverGirl, Roadblock, Helix, Jinx, Multo, Clutch, and Muskrat.
Can you tell who she might have missed?
Well, Wild Bill was in the previous panel.
Yeah. She name-checked him sort of, leading up to that. So yeah, the writing was just getting economical by not saying his name again. But there was someone else in the back of the C-130, even indicated in the art. So I'm not just using specialized knowledge from like 300 and before.
Okay, just cut the suspense.
It's long range.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Long range.
Long
he
range.
Uses long range for the first time in like 30 issues. But that is
well, I think thanks to the reuse of the long range code name in Sigma 6 as like a sniper, they've now attributed the Thunderclap driver long range as a team sniper. It's like this guy was getting no love as the Thunderclap driver. We've never seen the Thunderclap for like, I don't know, 100 issues more.
210 ish.
So let's include him as a team sniper now, which is a role that he's
team sniper.
There you go, man.
Well, he's had a lot of downtime to practice.
Exactly. That's cool. I'm just wondering if there was some confusion at some point because, yeah, in Sigma 6, that iteration of long range, totally different character, but he was absolutely the team sniper.
Well, Metalhead was Joe in G.I. Joe Extreme.
Oh, yeah. Waiting for that to make an appearance, at least in like an Easter egg format. I suppose, yeah, that was Larry's dark period. He had nothing to do with G.I. Joe over that decade or so. Mm-hmm.
So, where do we go from here? Oh my gosh.
Did you like the book? Are we there yet?
Are we there yet? Well, oh no, we're going to get to that. I know what I wanted to talk about. I want to talk about, because this is Chaplain's Assist Motor Pod, where I do talk about vehicles, and the one vehicle that it features prominently is the G.I. Joe Whale. Mm-hmm. Now, I believe, and Steve, I know you live, breathe, and eat these things just as much as me, if not maybe even more. I believe this is the first comic book appearance of the sled from the belly of the whale. And I'd be remiss not to mention that.
Yeah. If you can call it that.
That's a jet ski.
Yeah. How undignified would it be if the Cobra Commander had to lay belly down on this little, I don't know, is there a real life snake in the water? Is there a real life analog for a pod that the whales kind of escape sled? Or is it just some kind of
really it's supposedly like a landing sled. It's supposed to be.
Oh, right. Yeah, I think they used it as such in that miniseries
in the
episode.
Cobra Island arc in the 40s.
Yeah. Well, no, I think it was more in the cartoon. Didn't Spirit arrive on the island of no return on that thing?
Yeah, it could be.
Something like that. Yeah, and that was pretty much the only appearance that thing's ever had. So yeah, landing craft. I like to think of it as more like a diver delivery vehicle. Like I want to make everything a submersible, basically. But yes, in this iteration, we definitely see a more practical design in that it's a jet bike, a wet bike, a ski-doo, whatever you want to call those things. Yeah, it's an interesting look for the commander riding this thing with his cape blowing in the wind,
billowing out.
Recreational watercraft. Yeah, but dude, that's really, I think it looks cool though, like when CC's riding it. And I actually also like the fact that whatever it is, it's just a great feature on the toy. And I'm sure a lot of guys, if I had a whale, I would have probably been a lot more excited to be like, oh yeah, cool, let me put Cobra Command on this thing. Like, right. Yeah.
I'm grateful that Larry gets into the nuts and bolts of like, if you've got the whale going, like redlining it forward, if you open that sea door, you're immediately going to have to come to a stop. Otherwise, you're just going to flood the interior. So, he makes that a plot point. They have to throttle back, get the doors closed. Snake Eyes ain't got no time to mourn his daddy's death or adopted dad's death.
Yeah, I think they finally, I'm going to go back to the back of the book, but I think they pretty much ended the whole Snake Eyes throwdown, Dawn thing. Everybody was Snake Eyes 2, Snake Eyes 3. So it seems like that, because now Laura 343, she's like, hey, Sean, it's like it's all chummy chum now. It's like, yeah, no pretense of who's the fake, who's the real.
Well,
yeah,
who is the real? Can you really regard a clone Snake Eyes as the real Snake Eyes? It seems like, at least as far as issue 300 is concerned, Scarlet is prepared to go there. She's like, I don't care. But for the past, what is it, 50 issues? Throwdown has been Snake Eyes. Any appearance of Snake Eyes, it's been Sean. He is, at this point, a Snake Eyes with a little bit more history than a clone who's just kind of been birthed into the world not even a day ago. I don't know. That does not sit well with me. It feels too convenient, but this is a comic book for kids, right?
Well, it's a comic book. Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
I think it's safe to say that I don't think Larry has changed his focus for his audience, so that books that, maybe when we reread the early issues and when we reread, the Marvel run, we approach it as, well, I read this when I was 11. I read this when I was 12. So I understand what he was trying to do. And I wasn't ready for this kind of complexity in my comic book narrative. But now that we are continuing to read this into our 40s, that, now we want that complexity, but his focus, whether misguided or not, I don't want to even call it misguided. He's still focusing on trying to make this accessible for essentially all comic book readers. His books were always a step above in language, where, it's like, oh, I don't know what this word is. So you try to look it up in a dictionary, or hey, Mom, what does this Latin phrase mean? And I don't think he's ever strayed from that focus of where he wants to place his audience's like age / intelligence. And I think some readers get frustrated because they just think, because they've grown up, the property or the comic book should have grown up with them.
Yeah,
it's an unfair demand to make, even though, can you show me a single child that reads G.I. Joe, A Real American Hero?
And I'm sure we all can name one, sometimes podcasters that we do know a certain 12-year-old.
All right, point taken.
Probably is reading.
But yes, you're absolutely right, Gary. It is unfair to change the lens of scrutiny now. I just can't help the fact that I am a 40-something and I do have questions. For instance, I'm curious if we'll ever have a lantern hung on the current Snake Eyes' clone status and what that means for his relationship with Scarlet. I'm very curious to see if we get that scene, if we get any page time devoted to trying to negotiate a relationship with someone who might approximate her dead partner, but was born in a vat of chemicals, like very recently. Like, what does that mean? That's just bizarre.
Do we get to speculate where we think some of these things might go as well from this issue onwards?
Oh, we definitely will. I think before we do speculating, though, I just want to talk to your point, Steve, real quick. There's a real ship of Theseus argument for Snake Eyes. It's like they started with one piece of DNA from the original Snake Eyes, and they were able to clone him. So it is, we've replaced everything.
Yeah, who is the more Snake Eyes? Look, hey, there was a moment in this book where Dawn Moreno had romantic inclinations towards Scarlet. Without sounding like a horny schoolboy, at least narratively, like I'm interested in where that was going to go. We might never get an answer to that now.
Yeah, and you might get an answer in 60 issues or so.
But was that done to tell a story, Steve, or was that done to fulfill the male fantasy? Sorry, I'm just thinking.
I'd like to think Larry's not that basic, Paul.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he's not that basic as well. I'm just being a dick. Because.
But I really think Larry does those things to amplify or punctuate a point that Dawn has Snake Eyes' memories implanted inside her. And at that point, she was having a crisis of identity. So I think it helped, Dawn wouldn't normally act this way. But now she doesn't seem to be having those issues with identity all of a sudden. But, again, these are all things that could come back around. But yeah, before we get to speculation and hypotheticals, let's rate this book. Let's see, a scale of 0 to 5. What should we rate this on? Steve, you have any?
Stricken C-130s.
Okay, and a scale of 0 to 5, stricken C-130s. Paul, you're your first time on, so you get to go first.
I'm giving this an emphatic 4 stricken C-130s out of 5 because this is the best C-130 crash sequence I've read in a long time.
It's Chekhov's stricken C-130, guys. A aircraft with its engine out on page 1 will eventually land on page 20. Or crash.
It was great. I love how we've sort of skirted around the elephant in the room with this comic book.
Oh, the mutant zombie. I was just thinking, hey, wait a second, we were supposed to talk about that.
I think that fits into speculation more squarely than anything else.
All right, Steve, how many stricken C-130s?
I'm crazy about the art, less crazy about convoluted plot lines. In my heart of hearts, I wanted a soft reboot. It was not meant to be, but at least it kind of draws a line in the sand that Larry is beyond reproach. This is his book and no one is going to tell him how to run it. And long may that last. I'm now going to put the shoe on the other foot and say, this is a historic run. It's a record-breaking run. It's just astonishing. And because we've been there since practically day one as G.I. Joe hardcore fans, we can take a sense of ownership from this. We've propped this up. We are responsible for the fact that it still exists. And I'm proud to have this relaunch. So I'm gonna echo my boy Paul and say 4 stricken C-130s, making a hard landing. They stuck it, baby.
Well, now it's my turn, of course, and I think it's a good book. The art is fantastic. Larry, I think he's in form. He's doing what he does best. He's doing it on his own, but this is, he's doing it his way. And this one just, for me, ticks off almost all of my boxes. I'm going to give this one, and maybe it's just nostalgia or whatever, but for me, this is a 4.5 out of 5 stricken C-130s. I really enjoyed this book. I want to say that a book like this, I'm not surprised, is getting that second printing. I went looking just for an extra copy, just to have a reader, and I couldn't find one anywhere. I have multiple shops near me. They were all sold out. I was able to only get my copies that were in my pull list for me. So again, 4.5 out of 5. I'm really happy with overall how this book came out.
Yeah.
So now we can do speculation. Cool. Now we can talk about the elephant in the room, the mutant zombie virus.
Cracked knuckles.
Lead the charge, Paul. Cheapers.
Okay, so you guys brought out a very, very interesting point about the whole Snake Eyes thing and him being a clone. And this is complete speculation at this point. Like the book doesn't really hint at this too much. But I kind of feel like that Snake Eyes that we got, the clone that we were talking about, I think he's got a lifespan. I don't think I think his body's going to kind of degenerate, but I think he's going to miraculously have some resistance to the zombie strain, to the zombie mutagen. I just got that feeling that that's something that they're building up to, so they're going to make him a sacrificial lamb. I also feel like, even though, Steve, you mentioned that, like, in your heart of hearts, you were hoping it could have been a possible soft reboot, I still think we're building up to a Transformers the movie situation here. In that I think they are going to kill a few characters. I think they're looking to doing that. I mean, Mindbender's a freaking zombie, so that's gonna make
he's a clone.
Is he a clone? I didn't know that Mindbender's a clone. Okay. Yes, now I know.
Sorry, I don't mean to talk over you. But he's the first clone in G.I. Joe. He was cloned in the Transformers crossover in 130.
Oh my God! I totally forgot about that.
136, I want to say. He came out of because Megatron was the one that said your inorganic living tissue just woke up. So that's from the Transformers. So that was
crazy.
Oh my gosh!
Good recall, Gar.
Yeah, well played, man.
I read I read the hell out of those books when I was a kid. I loved the whole the 130s through 150s. I'm like the only guy that loved that series. I love Andrew Wildman. Yeah.
Beautiful.
You know, I've got those trades, and I admittedly have not cracked. I have not gone through them cover to cover. I've cherry picked them, so I think I need to get back into that and read those.
So,
but yeah, that's some speculation from me, at least. That's going forward, at least with Snake Eyes. Sorry, Gary.
So, and just for the listeners, so leading up into this recording, there was a group chat with the other members from issue 300, so Jason Morrell and Greg Engel, and we were all talking before things came up where Jason and Greg couldn't make this recording, but Greg posted about how issue 301 is a surprise enemy for issue 302. And my response, and I wanted to save it for this, is everyone on the freighter might be reanimated by this zombie bomb. And
that's a good one.
I think, we have all the characters, and Greg mentioned the original Serpentor, but we also have the original Mindbender is on that freighter. You have,
Voltar, Raptor.
Was Crocmaster there?
Probably, yeah. He was regarded as a traitor. He kind of sold out Cobra Commander to the Joes.
Firefly managed to get out, didn't he?
Zartan and Billy got out.
But then
any number of characters that we haven't seen for a while.
And my two favorites, two Hama originals, Tyrone.
Blind was he on the freighter?
Yes, he was on the freighter. Gosh. And Captain Min.
Didn't they cap Captain Min before that? No, he was thrown in alive?
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. Gosh. Okay. Well, that's a deep cut. Even among G.I. Joe hardcore fans, like Captain Min, Tyrone. Man, oh man.
And who do you think is going to lead them? Because they're going to be at odds with Cobra Commander, aren't they?
But Serpentor's hanging out.
Yeah, because he's in there. But wait, hold on.
Serpentor Khan.
Yeah, there's Serpentor Khan, but isn't Serpentor? No, Serpentor wasn't in that fight. No, that didn't. Wait,
No, he was.
Center
Firefly
was,
bashed the head in, and so this way, when the Toxo Vipers were scanning the tunnel that Billy and Zartan dug, issue 114, they said that
I've got 2 Stevens on this thing. Carry on.
but Firefly's reasoning was that they wouldn't have accounted for Zartan's body because Cobra Commander wouldn't have realized that Dr. Mindbender stuffed it away for a rainy day.
Serpentor's body.
Serpentor's body, yes, because Serpentor
was on
died in
ice.
Civil War 20 issues before Cobra Commander came back.
Right. Look, my knee jerk when this chat happened on the group, and let me just name check the podcasts involved, just in case anyone in listener land don't know. Jason is from Order of Battle Pod. Greg is from Anything Joe's. If you're listening to this, maybe consider giving him a listen too. Hey.
Yeah, totally.
If you want different takes on different aspects of this hobby, we got you covered, man. We got you covered. Anyway, so the first thought I had was like too much time has passed for those characters to be in play. Like a mutant zombie bomb may be able to reanimate recently deceased flesh, but that freighter is probably just filled with skeletons by now. So I'm Mr. Buzzkill, sorry. But hey, this is a funny book. Anything could happen, right?
But that's the thing with the zombie like chemistry and stuff, is that it could actually just reanimate dead flesh, and whatever.
I think of all the people on the freighter, the one who has the most mojo at the moment, ironically, is the most obscure, and that's Raptor. Raptor has got a following. He's getting a classified figure. They really like to lean into the freaks, and Raptor is the one who, like, imagine a mutant zombie freakazoid Birdman.
Flying mutant zombie account.
He already looks like something horrific. This kind of bird mutant.
Condor Man.
Yeah.
It's so
not going to happen, but you could have a lot of fun with a character like that, with mutant birds of prey. All of a sudden, I mean, just
that's from his file card.
They are mutated. Yeah. Right. Okay. Prescient. And I assume that was a file card written by Larry, because only Larry could look at this toy and say, yeah, I want to make him an accountant.
It's going to be an accountant. He's going to one of those eccentric types.
Yeah, you've got to sort of downplay the weirdo nature. You can't make this a Masters of the Universe character. You got to ground him in reality, sort of run culture, counter, juxtaposition this character. What a word. My speculation is it's going to get run of the mill again, boys. It's going to be G.I. Joe versus Revanche again. Investigating this AI. Look, AI is hella scary if handled like the most recent Mission Impossible film. But the way AI is handled in this book is it's a physical enemy with which you can shoot bullets and chop with swords. So I know an AI sort of in the ether doesn't necessarily make for the most dynamic of villains, but as I say, in that Mission Impossible film, it was handled in a very spooky way. And I think the fact that Revanche is constantly this like mech to be defeated makes it less dangerous and a bit repetitive. We shall see.
Either way, I think all three of us are going to pick up issue 302 and find out what's going on.
For sure.
Oh, totally. I feel like this is such a great dream team at the moment. Larry Hama and Chris Moonaham, and the colorist, whose name I totally forgot already. My apologies, colorist.
Francesco.
Who is just part of the magic of what makes this book so amazing. I am excited because I will probably be buying these on Kindle as long as this team is running, or as long as the story and stuff is still engaging and fun. It kind of makes me, and also no disrespect to Essel Gallant, but kind of makes me wonder, had this artist done the lead up to 300, if I would have maybe enjoyed it more. And I did find myself, like, after reading this book, I was wondering, if this was drawn by any other artist, would I have enjoyed this as much? Because I feel like we're kind of very positive about this zombie thing. And I kind of feel like the fan base as a whole might not be very excited about the zombie thing. I don't know. I don't know what the temperature.
Do zombies buzz your berries or not really?
Me personally, I feel they kind of played out, and I'm a little worried that this could go in the same direction as Marvel Zombies did. Marvel Zombies, the first two were actually good. That's why that whole thing, caught momentum. But then it started getting.
You do realize that Robert Kirkman wrote some of those, right?
Yeah, I'm very well.
Yeah, he also wrote this other zombie book called The Walking Dead. You might have heard of it.
Yeah.
Little indie title.
A TV show, like he did. That TV show did okay, right?
Yeah.
Comic book was so much better. Not to be that guy all the time, but the comic book really was much better. Anyway.
But does anyone have any reason to go back to Cobra Island? I mean, surely they will. Like, this is going to be some kind of disaster zone. We're going to have some cool zombie stories play out there, perhaps.
Yeah,
I don't know. I initially posed this question to Gary, so please, Gary,
thank you,
take
Paul.
it away.
Thank you, Paul. But I think the story potential is there, and I think it's interesting that it is zombies. It is Skybound. You have Robert Kirkman involved, but you also have Hasbro involved because we all know that this book has to go to Hasbro multiple times for approval. Again, we all know it's Larry Hama. He's going to steer this ship, and come heck or high water, it's him at the wheel. But then we also have the Hasbro aspect, but they seem to be more hands-off than they ever been. But again, we don't really know the behind the scenes of what they're saying. For the most part, I'm excited for the potential. I will wait to see the execution. So zombies, I'm fine with. I think, we needed to come back to Cobra Island for 150 issues. For whatever reason, Hama chose not to go back to Cobra Island. He felt that there was more storytelling outside of there. But I think it's good for Cobra or the Joes to just have another geolocation to have a story, much like Barovia, Trucial Abysmia, Fruzenland. So I think it's good to have another location, and I'm happy that it's in the rotation again.
Yeah, it seems like it was omitted glaringly as this kind of wasteland, but it's so cool to be back. Of all the locales, Cobra Island's number one, man.
That and I also think that what's happened on this island is going to also incur the wrath of the world's governments in the story. I mean, you can't just have this happen to a bunch of innocent people and the world kind of goes, oh, well. So I feel like there are going to be some bigger geopolitical things that might come into play as well in this book in the next few issues as well. Possibly more stuff from the jugglers, if they still exist. I don't even know anymore. The jugglers are still a thing.
Yeah, I think the jugglers are still a thing, but I don't know about much of the other countries because Hama's always shied away from other countries other than the Soviet Union or, the October Guard, who are just, for the most part, revanche robots now. So I don't know about the fallout. My biggest question is, did Cobra Commander truly escape the mutant zombie virus bomb? Because he's like, I just made it. But, is this the instance where we finally get, I was once a man, in the comic, as he slowly mutates? I mean, I think
that went through my head too.
Potential.
And is this contagious? Is he going to be patient zero, infecting the mainland?
Interesting.
That's actually
an added wrinkle to Larry's story. I know I started this podcast talking about how it feels like no one's going to interfere with the story that he's telling. But if you're right, Gary, and if this is kind of the influence from Kirkman at the top, that, yeah, I want zombies in my book, this is definitely a huge left turn. Because up to now, apart from the reanimation of dead characters, zombies ain't been a thing in G.I. Joe. There was one figure in the Eco Warriors, and now, the modern era had the Zombie Viper.
The Zombie Viper.
Larry,
that's a cool toy, man.
But it's a cool toy. We've got the mole rats, which look like...
We can put the mole rats in this book easily.
Disaster troopers. Yeah. I mean, they look like they have a more... Yes, they have a more comfortable fit in sort of the Transformers, G.I. Joe, Energon universe. But if it's a going concern, and that's kind of in the creative waters for our favorite G.I. Joe scribe, yeah, it might be. Why not work in the damn toys, Larry? We love that. Toys of all era.
I think those zombie figures, the classified ones, were released when they were, or the preview for them was released when it was, to test the water, to see how fans would react to that kind of thing being in G.I. Joe. As a lead up to this book. I just got that feeling. As soon as you mentioned it, I was like, oh yeah, they revealed those. And people were excited about them. So that was maybe them going, oh, okay, well, maybe our zombie idea.
More than revealed, at time of recording, people have them in hand.
Yes.
People have been putting black lights on them to show off exactly how...
It's a gorgeous figure. It's an absolutely gorgeous classified figure. Mm-hmm. Stray a little bit, is, the classified line really have been knocking out of the park with the sculpts. This is, the mole rat, for those that don't know, is part of the Walmart wave with the Night Force, the Range Viper, so we've had Big Ben, Shooter, and we also have the mole rat, and the mole rat is fresh and it is interesting, and I love it. I think it's a cool figure, and I'm happy I have one. It's gorgeous, and like you said, I think it was a lead up for energy for what's coming in the other continuity, the new the new image continuity.
It's gonna happen.
It was at IDW a long time, folks. But I think I've said all I can say about issue 301 and what's coming up. What do you guys think? Anything you got pressing on the old noggin?
I do want to kind of be a bit of a devil's advocate on the zombie thing. Sorry, just to one more thing in it, because they are unkillable. I think there's some serious positives to having a zombie force in G.I. Joe. I think that being that the comic book can at least focus on G.I. Joe being heroes and there being actual villains that they can fire their guns at fully, and not have this, not have too much moral qualms, about it. Because I know that G.I. Joe gets a lot of criticism for being a military book and a book that endorses military, by those people who, it's criticism that's leveraged by people who don't appreciate the military and things like that. So having the Joes fight zombies and having to essentially, get to grips and get kind of violent with zombies is kind of a good thing, because it brings that kind of thing to the comic book, which I think might be fun and might be refreshing. Because I did feel like with some of the issues, the IDW issues, they did kind of miraculously dodge certain bullets. Certain characters just got nicked instead of dying. So yeah, I think that opens up that side of the thing. I think on the other side, the negative side of it is that it could take away from what makes G.I. Joe special. I was actually, it's so cool how these things work out. Last weekend, I was having a chat with some guys about G.I. Joe and young ones. I mean, the one kid is 22 years old. Can't believe I'm calling a 22-year-old a kid. Ugh, I'm getting old. And he was asking me questions about G.I. Joe because he's kind of done with the Marvel Legends line and he really likes the G.I. Joe classified toys and he's trying to understand the characters more. So he's asking me stuff and I was getting into that kind of thing because incidentally, fan. And we had another guy there that was just not into G.I. Joe at all. And he's all like, damn, I got to pick up some of these books. I got to like give this a look. And what makes G.I. Joe so special is the intrigue, is the layers in the storylines, is the different characters having these different arcs. And I hope that they don't kill that or that doesn't disappear or fade away with this. And also back to the positive, because I'd like to end on a positive with this. Larry Hama is actually pretty awesome at writing horror and scary stuff. He published a novel. It's about vampires, and it's pretty cool actually. And I think he's been kind of I think he's kind of excited about writing that into this. So let's see how that goes. But yeah, those are my final thoughts on the story contained within this issue, and then also just seeing the little preview ad. Let's call it an ad for Duke. Welcome to the Energon universe. That also looks really interesting, and that art style also really speaks to me. So I'm very excited to see what happens with that book as well.
You've got me wondering about a zombie trope, though, Paul, and you're also a Dr. Mindbender fan. So do you think in this telling of the zombie story, it's irreversible, or do you think Mindbender and Serpental Khan can be restored? Because if that's the case, all the civilians who are infected on Cobra Island are not something you can just waste. You've got to try and save them, surely. Because you spoke about it like now G.I. Joe can be the good guys again. They still have something fleshy to shoot at. But is this a...
Well, yeah. A good point.
What's going to happen to your boy Mindbender?
I agree with you, Steve. I don't see Hama crossing that line because that would be very dark for this title.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to see the Joes shooting zombified civilians. I feel like we're going to see the Joes shooting the crap out of zombified Vipers and Cobra Troopers at all. And Mindbender...
And we're just going to forget about all the tourists.
And we'll forget about all the tourists. But, okay, so, like let's... to add to what Steven's saying, imagine the scenario goes like this, okay? So this has all happened. The world's government's responding, and their whole response is, well, we don't want it to be contagious, so let's like nuke the island. And so now you've got G.I. Joe having to like now turn around and go back to the island to go and essentially rescue these people. And so, and guys, I'm just pulling this out of my ass completely, but like to bring my immune Snake Eyes clone, he's going to somehow get involved there, and they're going to use his genetic material to create a zombie cure or some crap. But they're going to force Mindbender to do it because he's got the genetic know-how. And also, these zombies haven't lost their minds. They're still, they're still conscious of their behavior, and very possibly in control of themselves. And so maybe that's going to be the thing. Like, oh, we have to kill these zombies before they nuke the island. Otherwise, it's going to like cause all kinds of trouble or something like that. I mean, listen, I know it's got holes in, but maybe it's going to come down to the wire like that. Maybe Mindbender is going to be able to be used that way. But I still feel very strongly that that clone Snake Eyes is going to be discarded in some form or another. Like, I feel like he's got a shelf life for now.
I don't remember at this point, but I think, Hama get part of Skybound, part of the change of stewardship of the comic book was the fact that they wanted the original Snake Eyes back somehow, some way, some shape, some form. So then I don't think you're going to off essentially the Wolverine of this book. I think really the true long game on this the zombie tourists is it's really the true reintroduction of the Eco-Force in Airtight. I really think that's what
that would be cool. I know you're excited about that. Hey, I would love to see Airtight like getting in there and doing what he does best. That would be cool. Yeah, that's a great one. I like that. Some CDC action. Yeah, I feel like we've. I don't want to. We could speculate for hours. That's the beauty of like hypotheticals and speculation and all that stuff. We can go on forever. You know, the nice thing about having it on a podcast is that if we write, yeah, you know, hopefully
you go down in forever.
Yeah. Gary got it.
You're wrong. Well, nobody listens to this anyways. No.
Yeah. Oh, they were wrong. Like nobody will care if you're wrong. They care if you're right though. So.
I just flicked to the bio pages, gents, and I'm quite tickled by the way that it looks like the art for Snake Eyes is replicated for Sean Collins's entry. They just added the red bandana from Wade.
Why not?
Like, it's Rambo. It's Rambo Snake Eyes.
Yeah, this is Snake Eyes. Kept you waiting, huh?
And I delighted in like kind of just trying to remember where the quotes came from, because a lot of them come from either first or second or third version file cards, but Duke's definitely comes from the first miniseries of the cartoon, A Man of Action, which is lovely inclusion. And I wonder if that had the hand of the research consultant Diana Davis, potentially.
That would be cool. She's been very excited about this book. If you guys
Duke
follow
her
social
boy.
media. Yeah. And I'm sure she's like over the moon about the Duke book that energized thing. No, and I mean that in like the coolest way ever. Like if that's your job and you get to be involved in something with your favorite character, that's great. I love these little bios actually from the desk of Larry Hama. That was really cool. And I also really enjoyed this piece here from Chris. And I dig that Chris is not sorry, Chris, I'm referring to you at a first name basis, even though we don't know each other or anything. But the artist, I love that he's not a G.I. Joe fan. Like he you know, like it's not in his DNA, so to speak. But he's got a military, like a pseudo-military, well, he's got a military background. He grew up in a military household. So he's not a veteran or anything, but he grew up in a military home. And so, like, that's kind of cool because it adds, like, kind of his perspective, you know, from him in the art. I really dig that. But I also kind of feel that maybe that's kind of the magic of this book. It's like that the artist is not a G.I. Joe fan and that they're discovering all of this stuff for the first time, you know, and, like, imagine not knowing what G.I. Joe is or knowing that G.I. Joe exists, but not knowing much about it, and then working with the guy who created G.I. Joe and kind of discovering G.I. Joe with that person. When I say the man who created it, the man who created the legend of the characters in G.I. Joe. Imagine that and how inspiring that is. You know, you don't have any preconceived ideas as an artist about what you want to do. You're now being inspired from the source. That must be pretty insane. So that's just a small little takeaway here. So I'm now in reference to Diana Davis. I imagine that's what she's kind of going through here as well, even though she's a diehard Duke fan, but now she's involved in all of these books and it must be really exciting. So it's really cool.
Dream come true, man.
Yeah. This is an exciting time for G.I. Joe. It's great. It's cool to be excited about G.I. Joe. Steve?
I just... once again, before you're pinging things in my memory, that at the insert at the bottom of the letter from Larry is got something to say. We want to know, because knowing is, well, you get it. Email us at arah@skybound.com and mark OK to print. They are calling for letters. If you're a G.I. Joe fan out there and you're picking up this book, why wouldn't you want to see your words immortalized in the letters page of a G.I. Joe book? It's kind of an institution now, a long-running one. So I would encourage anyone listening to this to write into Skybound, because it isn't the 80s. Larry's desk isn't flooded with with emails and, well, back then it was snail mail. So it would be lovely to get that tradition started again.
Yeah, definitely.
Especially if it's something as banal as my favorite letter from the early pages of Postbox the Pit, which was, "My brother has Destro and I have Snake Eyes. Who would win in a fight?" And Larry's beautiful response was, "Well, that depends on whether your brother is bigger than you." Bless you, Larry.
Ain't that the truth?
Yeah. Love that.
Well,
Sweet.
I think that closes out today's conversation on issue 301. I want to thank you, Steve, and thank you, Paul, both from the incredible podcast YouTube channel, G.I. Joburg. I encourage anybody listening to this, if you aren't already checking them out, you should check them out. They produce awesome content on a bi-weekly basis, along with special YouTube play motion shows produced by themselves and also other friends of their channel. So I would like, again, thank you both for hopping on with me and talking about this new restart of the G.I. Joe, A Real American Hero universe. I'm the host, Gary. Thank you for listening to the Chaplain's Distance Motor Pod. If you're listening to this podcast, feel free to like, review, comment on, or do anything that engages with this podcast, because it only helps grow and improve this podcast. For more Chaplain's Assistance Motor Pod, you can find me on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook at Chaplain Joe Pod, or you can send an email to chaplainjoepod@gmail.com. But I would also echo Steve's sentiment and send an email to arah@skybound.com. Mark it okay to print, especially if, that's going to only help improve and grow G.I. Joe, A Real American Hero, because Larry has said he does read the letters. So, tell him you want to see more Tripwire. Tell him you want to see more Alpine. He'll probably find a way to put it in. Or maybe not. Who knows? It's Larry. Or Mr. Hama. Again, referring people to by the first name basis. And I don't know, with all that said and done, one final missile for the masses: be decent to each other.
Party on.
All right, goodbye.